emotional skill development. So we welcome you, Dr. Mishra, on behalf of National Academy of Pedagogical Sciences. We are fortunate and honored to have you here today with us. And I will tell you briefly about Dr. Arvind Kumar Mishra. Dr. Arvind Kumar Mishra teaches social psychology at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Before joining GNU, he taught at University of Delhi and Jamia Millia Islamia. He has teaching experience of over 27 years. He is a co-editor of 5 books. Books are Interrogating Development, Insights from the Margins. This is Oxford University Press in 2010. School Education, Pluralism and Marginality, Comparative Perspectives. This is by Orient Blackswamp, 2012. Dynamics of Inclusive Classroom, Social Diversity, Inequality and Social Education in India. This is by Orient Blackswamp, 2017. And The Marginalized Self, Tales of Resistance of a Community by Primus Books in 2020. The Social Context of Learning in India, Achievement Gaps and Factors of Poor Learning by Routledge, 2020. Some of his 23, okay. Some of his research papers are published in prestigious journals such as American Journal of Orthopsychiatry, the Journal of Social and Political Psychology, International Journal of Disaster Risk Reduction. His research focuses on resistance to modernity, philosophy of social research, critical and theoretical psychology, academic experiences of disadvantaged students, and self and identity processes among marginalized communities. He has jointly completed an ICSSR research project on shared spaces, boundaries, barriers, and bridges, and has been the principal investigator of a UK-India Education Research Initiative research project on social identity, well-being, and civic participation among social and ethnic groups of India. Sir has received Shashikala Singh Gold Medal for being the best candidate in MA Psychology examination of Delhi University in the year 1991. So brilliant. We have an esteemed speaker today and a very important topic of emotional psychology. So we will all be benefited by his presentation, and over to you, Dr. Arvind Mishra.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would like to stand. It is still good morning or good afternoon?
Just
It's noon. Yeah, good noon. I'm really very happy to be here and amongst you. I know you all are scientists, and I have done science only up to +2. After that, I changed my trajectory and joined social science. But I do take interest in science and what is science. And basically, I read philosophy of science. And before coming here, I was talking to Joint Director, Professor Ravindra Padaria, that no, there should be interaction between social scientists and scientists. It's not that we are very different. Although we use different language, but we can learn from each other. I think that should be the spirit of. And one thing that can connect us is philosophy of science, because we all do science, but science, by science we do not mean, and science does not mean one thing. There are different ways of doing science. And there are problems in science also. And so when we talk about Green Revolution and its contribution to address food shortage, but there are scholars who are also talking about it. There are books with the title Violence of Green Revolution. So science has a positive side, but science has a violent side also. And so now when we talk about environmental degradation, so I'm not saying that we should not use science, but we do acknowledge that science is also responsible for degradation of environment. And we should understand and use science with care rather than So sometimes when we do not know the philosophy behind science, we become slave to science. Whereas what is the spirit of science? The spirit of science is we should have a rational and critical thinking. Scientists never are not supposed to have faith. And it has been documented by international scholars that when we evoke image of science, people start having faith in science. Whereas in fourth century ago, when science came in Europe, it came as a reaction to challenge authority of religion and church in Europe. And it was against human tendency to have faith, to accept anything uncritically. But this has become, but this is not my main topic. I was simply saying that philosophy of science is one area which you take interest, then there can be interaction and meaningful dialogue between social scientists and the scientists. And both streams of scholarships are very, very important because after all, we are human beings and we are living in a society and working for the betterment of the society. So we require science, but we require social science knowledge also. And unfortunately, in Indian system is so traditional and rigidly defined. So even though government pay lip service for interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and multidisciplinarity, but students after doing their PhD, when they apply for job, departments are traditionally divided, and the people who are there, they have very traditional mindset, and they will scrutinize the application, and this candidate has not done MSc in this or not eligible. Whereas in any good institute in the world, it is possible that a person who is very good at music and can be admitted in a laboratory of physics and can do research. In fact, I know one physicist, Fritjof Capra, and who became very famous for writing some books and which are bestseller, not technically in physics, book like Tao of Physics. He was a physicist. And when he found that his insight of physics is leading him to something, so he did some study on the spiritual tradition of the eastern part of the world. And this book, The Tao of Physics, subtitle is that Parallel Between Findings of Modern Physics and Eastern Mysticism. This is a glorious example of interdisciplinary mind, that a physicist who did PhD from top university in the world and then has read, and he finds a similarity, parallel that is insight that comes from Eastern mysticism and quantum physics, high energy physics. I think this is possible. And we all have to collectively contribute to accomplishment of that rather than only paying lip service. So agriculture is agriculture and physics is physics and psychology is psychology. I think this mindset is coming. So unless we read outside, which we call out-of-box thinking. So out-of-box thinking is very, very important. Now, let's come back to this social and emotional skill development, why it is required. I have been told by Professor Padaria that now government expects you all to be a teacher also. You are an accomplished scientist, and because of your competence in research, you have been appointed, but now government expects you to teach also. So a good, knowledgeable person is not necessarily a good teacher. We all have experience, no? At school level, at college and university level, some teachers may not be very knowledgeable, but he or she may be excellent teacher. And we remember some teacher, not because of his or her scholarship only, but because of his or her human quality. And I will share with you an example who is from my field. A person whose name is Robert Sternberg till recently, he was in Yale University, but I have come to know that he has shifted to some other university. He works in the field of intelligence. Because in psychology, we study about intelligence. And if I tell about his accomplishment, you all would be surprised that how can person do so. He has published more than 1,500 research papers and all international top level. 1,500. So if suppose his active research life is 50 years, so 1,500 means each year 30 paper international. Is it possible? I'm not able to publish more than one paper international. So in 1 year, 30 papers. And not only that, he has published more than 100 books. And he writes about, and in one of the articles, top journal, he writes that as a primary school student, he was considered as a very dull student. Teacher used to consider him dull. So he says that my performance was also like a dull student. And then when he came to junior high school, they call middle school, something like junior high school. So he was fortunate to get a teacher, a lady teacher, and who was very fond of him. And she was very affectionate towards him and used to say that you can do well. And simply because of this, he said that his academic performance went up. So person who was considered a dull child at primary level, and because of intervention of one good teacher, because of her good human quality, and I have shared with you his academic accomplishment, more than 1,500 papers. And this I am saying on the basis of a paper which he himself wrote 8 years ago, and he is still active. So now I think his number of papers must have crossed 1,600. And by that time, he has written also 3 or 4 books. So this wonder is possible. So a teacher, having knowledge is a necessary criterion for being a teacher, but it is not a sufficient criterion. Knowledge is important, but knowledge is not the only thing which a teacher should have. Whereas it's not that even a scientist, you should not have another kind of quality. But as a teacher, because teaching is a human interaction. No, we interact with the human mind, and we interact with young mind. And young mind are very ambitious, very ideal also. May have also distractions also, and may face many challenges also. How to engage them? How to inculcate interest in them? I read Rabindranath Tagore, and I remember one of his statements, and that's very important, which I remember as a teacher. A teacher's job is not to teach a student. He says a teacher's job is only to knock at the door of the mind of a student. If you have done that, you have done your duty. No? Create curiosity in the mind of a student, and a student will take care of himself or herself. But basically what happens as a teacher, a traditional image of a teacher, that teacher is like a god, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent. No. Teachers are human beings. Teachers are not omniscient. Teachers know something. By virtue of being elderly, teacher has read more than the student. Another wrong impression about a student is that a student comes to the class with empty mind. No, a student does not know anything. And a famous educationist, his name is Paulo Freire, he was from Brazil, but in education, his book is considered classic, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So anybody who is in the field of education has to read his book. It's an all-time classic. And he says that this image, that teacher has all the knowledge and students' mind are like empty vessel. So this metaphor, empty vessel. And teacher has to pour knowledge in the empty mind of student. This is traditional image of teaching. And Paulo Freire says that, I think this image and our understanding about teacher based on this image is very faulty. No? Let's consider our student that they do not come with empty mind. They have knowledge already. In fact, as a student of psychology, I can tell you that and there are certain essential qualities of certain things, like if there is a river has to flow. River will intrinsically flow. And one has to put some effort to stop the flow of river. Otherwise, what is the nature of river? It will flow. Similarly, if there is a tree will grow. Unless you deprive tree of water, and minerals, and oxygen, tree will have tendency to grow. Similarly, a human being has a tendency to learn. So immediately after birth, and now some research suggests that even when child is in the womb of mother, child is learning something. So by the age of, I think, 6 months, child in mother's womb starts recognizing mother's voices. And that's why we find when child is born and child cries, and it is only mother who can comfort child. So child has already learned and touch of a mother. So learning is an essential or inherent quality of human being. We cannot stop human being from learning. Human being learns all the time. It is internal characteristics of human being, learning. But if I share with you a report of learning outcome, and our latest book was based on that, which came in this year, the social context of learning. There is an organization in India which is called Pratham. And Pratham conducts learning outcome survey every year, and it publishes on 16th January every year. And it is called Acer, ASER, Annual Survey of Education Report. It's a, although NGO, but government recognizes it. And it is considered one of the most scientifically conducted surveys. What do we learn from this survey? The situation of school education in our country is not very good, as per Acer Report. And it has been found class 7 students do not possess knowledge which is expected from class 3 or class 2 students. So as far as, although because of government effort and a new act that has been passed, Right to Education Act, so enrollment, in terms of enrollment, we have improved a lot. Students have started going to school. So old phenomenon of out of school children is no longer a disturbing feature. But what is happening? In school, children are not able to learn. And that is clear from Acer Report. Why children are not able to? What did I say? I say that to learn is an intrinsic quality of human being. If only human being does not have some neurological problem. There are unfortunate children who are born with some neurological disorder. So except for them, all human beings are likely to learn, and they do learn all the time. But why this survey shows us that they are not learning? Which means, and this is very counterintuitive, school is doing something which is going against the tendency of child. Although we all believe that children go to school to learn, and school wants to teach, school has to facilitate learning of children, but school is not doing that. School is doing something against learning. I will again share some research finding. One is that it is reported that generally, even in a learning crisis, we call it learning crisis, in which discipline there is a maximum crisis, and it is mathematics. Mostly it is called STEM discipline. STEM is acronym: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But mathematics, there is a problem. But it is our experience when you find some children from poor family, they sell small things on roadside, pan, gutka, or anything like that. And if you purchase, and if suppose you have purchased something which cost around or price is 12 rupees and you have given 20 rupees note, that child will immediately return you 8 rupees, which means he can calculate that you have given 20 rupees and the article you have purchased from him, price is 12. So 20 minus 12, 8. So he can do this arithmetic operation. But in research, it has been found, same child who has already shown this arithmetic ability, when he is tested in school condition on the same skill, 20 minus 12, he will fail. And research has been conducted. Means our way of testing a student is faulty. Because what is the purpose of testing? Purpose of testing is to know what child already knows. So in real life situation, child has shown that ability and he has been doing this without any formal training. Some training he may have got, but in a school setting, he is not able to show that ability. In fact, many times we have found that in a school setting also, what child can show or demonstrate, but because of faulty examination or assessment system, child will fail. So we call this phenomenon as examination anxiety. And it is quite natural. Even at this age, if I have to face an interview for promotion, I'll be slightly tense. It is possible that I will not have a sound sleep because of the tension, what kind of question would be asked. So it is very natural. A teacher has to be mindful of all these factors, that learning is not only a cognitive activity. What we call cognitive, so mental activity. And in mind, we have part, I think you are scientists, so you know more than what I know about brain. But if we divide brain into 3 parts, cerebrum, cerebellum, and limbic system. So cerebrum is or cerebral cortex, which is advanced form of human brain, and that supports our cognitive or intellectual or mental activity. But we have limbic system also, and which is responsible for our emotional aspect. And what I have learned, that in brain, it is limbic system which is older as compared to cerebrum. So cerebrum is a newer structure in the process of evolution. But there is no watertight compartment between cerebrum or cerebral activity and limbic system activity. So human emotions and human cognition or intellectual activities are not disconnected from one another. They are not. They are essentially, because brain functions in unison, as a whole. As a whole. Somehow this common sense prevails among all of us. Many times we say, don't be emotional, be rational. What are we saying? That there is an antagonistic relationship between rationality and emotionality. So if you become emotional, you will not be rational. So there is a negative image about human emotion, that if you become emotional, then your rationality will be compromised, it will be lowered down. This is what we think. So be very rational. And what I'm saying, it is not simply a belief, it informs our practices and policies also. So at higher education level, at research level, our training is mostly focused on promoting and improving the cognitive capacity of student and research. तो आप अगर सेमिनार करते होंगे तो your resource person or colleagues only talk about the knowledge part, not the emotional part. As if emotional part is unimportant. It is not for the research. It is only for gupshup. It is for our entertainment. But for serious business or teaching and research, it's only intellectual part, the cognitive part. That is our area. So all higher education institution, not only in our country, but elsewhere also, it mainly focuses on addressing, promoting, improving the mental capacity, not emotional capacity. Because we believe that emotional capacity is different. It is not connected with cognitive capacity. So the more serious you are, the better scientist you will become. This is the message. The more knowledgeable you are, better teacher you will be. But now, and you must have heard this concept because it has become very popular, emotional intelligence. But unfortunately, people learn about emotional intelligence from wrong source. There is a person whose name is Daniel Goleman, and book written by him is available everywhere in the market. So wherever you go and you find a book with the title Emotional Intelligence, 99% chances that it has been written by Daniel Goleman. And Daniel Goleman is not a serious researcher. So what he writes about emotional intelligence, it is not based on rigorous scientific research. So please, what I wish to say, please do not learn and know about emotional intelligence by reading Daniel Goleman's book, which is unfortunately very, but he writes very well. So for common people, it is very accessible language. He writes in very interesting language. But that is not very based on sound research. But this does not mean that emotional intelligence is not important. So emotional intelligence is also considered a form of intelligence. And some researchers say that our emotional capacity is a higher level of intelligence. So what is happening now? The traditional image that intelligence or cognitive activity and emotional activities are different. And in fact, the latter, that is emotional process, may negatively interfere with our mental activity or intellectual activity. But current research in psychology and cognitive science inform us that emotion aids our intellectual capacity. In fact, some people have conducted interview with Nobel Laureate in science, those who get Nobel Prize in science. And based on those interview with Nobel Prize winner, the person has said that at highest level of in science, means all top scientists, they are rational, but they are highly emotional. And some of their activities are against rationality also, you will find. And I will give you one reason, because I was fortunate to attend a lecture by Nobel laureate when I was in Jamia Millia Islamia. His name is Douglas Ostroff, and he got Nobel Prize perhaps in 1996 for PhD, which he did in 1972. And he says that when he was registered for PhD, and some experiment he was planning to do in H3, something like that. I don't understand technical thing, but the message I wish to convey, And his experiment was not working. So for first 3 years, other colleagues who got registered for PhD in the same year, they had advanced in their PhD to some degree. But his experiment was not working. So anybody would be tense. But a rational person would have done what? If your experiment is not working, you change your topic, you do something else, because it is not workable. But he insisted on that. And he said that after 3 years, one day he was working in lab, and in midnight, around 2 o'clock, suddenly he found that now experiment is working. And out of excitement, he called his supervisor, who must be sleeping, 2 o'clock. And we know that in Western country, people are very polite and civilized. They don't disturb anybody even during daytime. But out of excitement, he called, and supervisor also picked up his phone, and he was not unhappy or angry. He was also very angry. So this is one instance that a person was ziddi. It will work. And he says that in 96, I got information about Nobel Prize midnight, 2 o'clock. So 2 o'clock night has a coincidence in his life. Let us think about Albert Einstein. When he came out with his special theory of relativity in 1905, and there was no mathematical support for that. And Einstein, despite publication of 3 path-breaking paper in 1904 or 1903, people say from physics that for all 3 papers he should get separate 3 Nobel Prize. Such a path breaking. He did not get job. And he got job he was a patent clerk when he published this paper. He got job as a faculty member in 1912 or 11. And many times he was rejected. The top physicist and mathematician, they would not agree. Even his teacher was not supporting him. But he had, you can say, gut feeling and intuition about what he was believing in. And he was trying to gather evidence to support his theory. And finally, he gave general theory of relativity in 1916 or something like that. So he called, although Eddington called Einstein after he published it and wanted to congratulate and said, Einstein, no, I think I'm wrong. It is Eddington who did some experiment, and his experiment supported general theory of relativity. And then he conveyed this thing to Einstein. But Eddington said, Professor Einstein, if my experiment had not supported your theory, how would you have reacted? He said, I have thought that your experiment is wrong. So this is an example that scientists are not logical in that way. May have higher logic, but in our sense of logic, what he says that I don't care whether your experiment supports my theory or not. I have believed that my theory is correct. This comes from the greatest scientist of the century. So scientists are highly emotional people. They listen to the voice of some inner thing. In fact, I will again quote one mathematician, Poincare. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Poincare, French name. He says that scientists work in some area not because it is useful, but because it is very enjoyable. And why it is enjoyable? Because it is beautiful. And one, again, Nobel laureate, Subramaniam Chandrasekhar, who was nephew of C.V. Raman, who got Nobel Prize for astrophysics in 1983. After getting Nobel Prize, he published a book. And what was the title of the book? Beauty and Truth. That is the title of the book. And subtitle of this book is Motivation and Aesthetics in Science. These two concepts, motivation and aesthetics, non-scientific, non-cognitive things in science. So these are the things coming from top level scientists who are Nobel laureate. Why I am giving example of scientists? Because if I say anything as a social scientist, you will not believe me. Social science वाले तो कहानी करते हैं, इनको कुछ आता ही नहीं. They are just storyteller. So I have to use this strategy to convey my message by quoting the top scientists, top brain of this world, who have made mark on intellectual landscape of humanities. So emotional aspects are very, very important, even at highest level of science. Creativity in science comes, and we call it counterintuitive thinking. Counterintuitive. So what we call logical, जो science में रोज करते रहते हैं, you are not logical, you are not logical. No. Let there be counterintuitive. So dispute between Niels Bohr and Einstein was never resolved. Because Bohr used to believe, based on his experimental finding, that fundamental nature of physical reality is probabilistic. There is no order in that. There is no order. And Einstein had a gut feeling, this world has been created by God, a super mind. And something which has been created by God, how can it be a chaotic? So his famous statement, God does not play dice. Okay? And so between two great minds, and incidentally, they got Nobel Prize back to back year, 1922 and 23. So in science also, there are debates. And I read that it used to be said in all great department of physics to the budding physicist, if you want to do well in physics, don't read Einstein. Especially don't read what he has written in his later part of life. In fact, जो हिंदी में हम लोग थे सठिया आ गए, senile. No, in English they used to. He has become senile. Don't read. Only read young Einstein. Don't read, because if you start reading Einstein, the old Einstein, you will not be able to do anything with physics. But in Einstein's mind, the image of physics was very, very different. And now we are getting some finding in physics also. And so distinction between religion and physics, these are getting blurred. So basically up to now, what I have tried to do, that emotion is not a villain in the domain of science and research. Emotion is rather very friendly, or is a friend, and can be friend to scientists also. So scientists should, by learning from top scientists, the Nobel laureate, that our emotional capacity of our brain is very, very essential for cognitive functioning also. The last example I will give, there was a person who was university topper, and after getting university degree, he got job in a multinational corporation. He was CEO. Unfortunately, he met with an accident. And in the accident, some part of his brain got injured. So after treatment, he came back to his job. But his functioning was not up to the level what he was. It was before he met with the accident. So people, even he was very disturbed. And test of intelligence was administered on him. So about intelligence IQ, we say that around between 120 to 130 IQ is very high level of IQ. So since he was a university topper, very intelligent, so before accident, his IQ level was between 120 to 130. Even after accident, and when he joined job, his IQ level did not come down. It was between 120 and 130. But his level of performance was very low after accident. So research that was reported on him by Antonio Damasio. He is one of the top neuroscientists in contemporary time, Antonio Damasio. And he has reported it, that what happened to him. So in accident, the part of brain which supports our emotional capacity got damaged. So although his analytical skill, which is measured by traditional test of intelligence, it was intact. So he can do all those logical thing, analytical thing. But his emotional capacity got reduced because of accident. Now, what is very significant for you? In real life and also in academic at higher level, the problem we deal with, the problems are complex problem or ill-defined problems. So in psychology, we categorize problem into two. The well-defined problem and ill-defined problem. What is the example of well-defined problem? So if somebody gives me a problem of mathematics, that a person is running with the speed of certain speed. So after 10 minutes, how much distance he or she will cover? It is very clear. So if you know this mathematics, you will be able to solve it. It is well-defined problem. And in well-defined problem, if we apply algorithm, you will get a solution. So well-defined problem has only one solution, and that is the correct solution. Whereas ill-defined problem has more than one solution. In our day-to-day practical life also, and in higher level academics, research, at the level of Nobel Laureate, they are dealing with those phenomena about which there is not much clarity even among scientists. So it is like ill-defined problem. So scientists of the level of Nobel Prize, they are dealing with ill-defined problem. There is no right or wrong solution. And for dealing with ill-defined problem, we do not require only our cognitive ability, we require emotional ability also. So it is combination of our cognitive ability and emotional ability that help us to deal with ill-defined problem effectively. So in science, and this I have learned by reading those papers based on interviews with the Nobel laureate, that one can make a breakthrough in science also only when you have your well-developed emotional capacity and you listen to your. So Blaise Pascal, who was a mathematician, he says that heart has also it is coming from a mathematician, one of the top. Heart has also its reason, which reason does not understand. So a good scientist, a good mathematician has to learn the logic, the voice that is coming from heart. Okay. Now, so in the field of science also, there is sufficient role of emotion. Now, let us come to the teaching. And in teaching, I have said, about school, I have talked that our children are not able to learn, although it is very natural for human beings to learn, and they do learn. Rather, it is difficult to stop them from learning. But in school, they are not able to. In school, some negative things are happening, although nobody can be held responsible and nobody is doing it intentionally. And what is that? A research has been conducted again in the field of educational psychology, and we have a concept which is called self-efficacy belief. As a teacher, you should know this concept. If you want to become a teacher, you must know this concept, self-efficacy belief. This concept was given by an American psychologist, Albert Bandura, who died last year at the age of 100 years. He lived for 100 years full. And he has given this concept, self-efficacy belief. Now, what is this self-efficacy belief? Self-efficacy belief is that any human beings believe about one's own competence, what I can do. For example, my belief that in mathematics, I can score 80 marks out of 100. So it is my mathematics self-efficacy belief. Similarly, I can have an athlete can have, suppose, 100-meter runner, that I will be able to run for 100 meter in 9 seconds. Or a batsman, that I can score triple century. So research has been conducted on, again, gold medalist in Olympic, because those who compete all are top level people. So on particular day, what happens that a person gets Nobel Prize and another gets silver or bronze. So interview was conducted with the Olympic gold medalist. And they said that in terms of technical, there has to be a training. So there is no substitute for that. But training alone is not sufficient to make you a gold medalist. So you'll find even Indian cricket team employs psychologists, sports psychologists. Sports psychologists do not know. You cannot make a person a good batsman or good bowler, a good fielder. For that, you have a batting coach, a bowling coach, and fielding coach. What is their role? Why does it happen that some batsmen like Sachin Tendulkar, who used to score century, but there was a lean patch. His batting skill did not get deteriorated. No, he did not forget his batting skill, but why he was not able to score century? Something at psychological level happened. So for performance, whether in sports or movie, so Amitabh Bachchan's movie was flop for many years. Whereas as an actor, he was improving. So in all fields of life, all walks of life, our specific, domain-specific skill is not sufficient. So as a researcher, agriculture researcher, of course you should have domain-specific skill and knowledge. Without that, you cannot be a good teacher. But that alone is not sufficient. One cannot become a good cricketer or good Olympic runner or a scientist also. So they said that they had self-efficacy belief. Now, Bandura says, and this is the sentence from Albert Bandura, that our self-efficacy belief is as fragile as glass. Any object made of glass is very fragile. Handle with care, fragile material. So self-efficacy belief of human beings are fragile. Now, I'm sharing with you a disturbing finding of it, a disturbing finding of the research about school. What happens? So before children go to school, before nursery or primary level, When self-efficacy belief of children were measured, it was found that they have high level of self-efficacy. So children, before going to school, all children have high self-efficacy belief level. And there is no difference in terms of class also. So children coming from poor family, working class, and children coming from middle class or upper middle class family, in terms of self-efficacy belief, there is no difference. Once they get admitted into school and they spend 1 year in school, and their self-efficacy belief were measured after the end of 1 year of schooling. What was the result? Result was that self-efficacy belief of children, especially who were from poor family, it went down. So school is a violent place where there is a psychological violence. Now, who is the violent person there in school? Everybody. Why? And this is important for all of us. In psychology, research has been conducted on stereotype. Have you heard this term, stereotype? That our a generalized belief about certain group. You know, Bengalis are like this, Tamilians are like this, Punjabis are like this, Gujarati. These are examples of stereotype. It is a universal human phenomenon. All parts of the world, people use stereotype. It is not specific to India. And it is said that by the age of 6 or 7, all children learn about stereotype. All those stereotypes which are used in the society about other group and about their own group, children learn it. So don't think children are innocent. All children have knowledge about stereotypes that are used in a particular society about their own group and about other group. Generally, we know that we use negative stereotype about other groups. It is common. So group A will have a very negative stereotype about group B and vice versa. Don't trust these people. They are like this. This is common everywhere. It has been found universally that those who belong to minority group or disadvantaged section in society, there is a negative stereotype about them. And teachers, after all, he or she is a human being. So we also carry those stereotypes in our mind. So when we are teaching in our class or dealing with our student, although we are focusing on some topic of agriculture science, but the stereotype which is already stored in mind has not gone away. It is there in mind. And when we meet a student or encounter a student and who is different from us, and especially he or she is from disadvantaged community, the negative stereotype which is stored and lying dormant till now suddenly gets activated unconsciously. So we all are vulnerable to unconscious activation of negative stereotype which we hold about another group. We all, as you don't think we are like a God and perfect. Nobody is perfect, and we all are victim of stereotype. Especially when we do that. And this stereotype causes havoc. So even though being a very sophisticated scientist and modern person, we don't use stereotypical thinking in our formal classroom. We never use, because there can be complaint against us. So we don't criticize some caste or some community or some gender. We don't do that. But in psychology, it is said, those who have done research on communication, in face-to-face situation like this, 70% communication is non-verbal communication, only 30% is verbal. So what we talk to our student is the verbal part. But there is a non-verbal, and which is predominant, 70%, and about which we do not know. Is there any college, university, training institute where teachers and scientists are given training for non-verbal communication? It's only in Film Institute and NSD. But actors have to be very good at their non-verbal communication, eye movement, facial expression, everything. But teachers are dealing with the human being. And our non-verbal communication is very, very prominent there, over which we have no control, we have got no training, we are not aware of also its impact, but its impact is already there. So all those negative stereotypes which we hold in our mind get translated in terms of our non-verbal communication. Even also Sigmund Freud, who is one of the great scientists, psychologists, he says that when our lips are tight, every pore of our body starts speaking. So even 3-year-old child can read our non-verbal communication. Message we are sending. So the Acer report, which I shared with you, why children are not able to learn in classroom, or some start failing, not because of any bad intention on the part of scientist and teacher, because of some negative stereotype which we have learned from our society, and it is part of our unconscious, and we don't pay much attention to that, and it starts playing its role in classroom situation. Okay. So as a teacher, first thing we all should do soul searching. As I said that there is no single human being except very evolved person like Lord Buddha, Jesus Christ, Mahatma Gandhi, and Prophet. We all are imperfect human beings. We all are vulnerable to negative stereotypes that are prevalent in society. And these negative stereotypes do impact our non-verbal communication, about which we are not aware. And this is one of the dangerous villain that is active in classroom situation. And many of our students become victim of that. And because of this self-efficacy belief, so I shared with you findings of a research that within 1 year, self-efficacy belief of children go down. And according to Albert Bandura's research, that academic performance is very much related with our self-efficacy. So Sachin Tendulkar is not able to score century despite being the best player, despite scoring 80 century, international century, because there is no any problem in his batting skill. There is a problem in his self-efficacy. So even adult human beings go through their crisis in terms of self-efficacy belief. Children are more vulnerable to that. Even young students are more vulnerable to that. Its teachers are not only one source. Their classmates are also, maybe in larger society also, they face stereotype. So this social skill, so in a broader sense, so teachers are not only cognitive being. As a teacher, we are a full human being. So we have our social aspect, we have emotional aspect, and we have our cognitive and intellectual aspect. So we have to recognize ourselves, all aspects of ourselves, and their respective role in teaching and when we are dealing with the student. So teachers, that's why I said in the beginning, even a less knowledgeable teacher can be a good teacher. And a very, very knowledgeable teacher also can be a bad teacher. And only because of this social and emotional aspect. Now, how to improve it? Question is that. So far what I have done, I have indicated significance of social and emotional aspect even in academic and research domain. How to do that? First, I think seminar or workshop like this where some psychologists come and they share with you their research. So I'm sure that you got some information, you got sensitized. Next time when you get some book on book stall you would like to purchase and buy and read it and discuss also. Second is that if emotional aspect is neglected aspect in academic domain, now we have to revise our belief about academic activity in academic. So what is good academic culture? So in IARI, no, that is institute. So if we want to make it one of the best institute, what are the other things? And before coming to this classroom, I was having a chat and NAC evaluation. But NAC is not sensitive because NAC is again very crude measurement. So NAC is not sensitive to, or there is no scope to any institute where emotional sensitivity is in plenty. No, we have image of IIT and IIM, very positive image. But what is the dark side of IIT? Every year there is a report of suicide. Yes. How many suicide report is there from JNU and DU? Very few. I know only one suicide last 10, 15 years. Which means IIT might be doing its job, but it is a partial, because you have to, and I have talked to, because I go to IIT Delhi to take some of the classes, and I find students are very, very depressed. Many students are depressed, and those who come from disadvantaged background, for them, there is no sensitivity in entire institution. So only yesterday I read that in IIT Bombay, now they have come out with a circular that you cannot ask about their rank, because rank indicates their caste category also. Because in IIT Bombay, being the top IIT, so somebody with 2000 rank is coming to IIT Bombay, it means he or she is not from general category. And that's how you come to know about the caste. So that's how stereotype. So in IIT, this negative stereotype operates like anything. And as an institution, IIT is not sensitive. No, in fact, I will say, based on my many IIT faculty will contest. They will not agree with me. They have become robo. They have become robo. And hardly, I think any generalization has a problem. So even the generalization I'm making, it will be contested. But students have reported to me that IIT teachers do not bother whether we learn or not. Fictitiously, they have set a standard in their mind. Mera uncha hai. And like a tape recorder, they will be on. And they will start speaking in the class without bothering whether students are understanding. Is it job of a teacher? No, there cannot be a pre-set standard in any institution. A teacher has to be responsive. A teacher has to be responsive to the cognitive, emotional, and social needs of the student. Okay? And so this is my strong criticism. As I said that all IT teachers, some are very, very sensitive, I know that. Another thing is that although Pandit Nehru thought that in all IITs there should be a department of humanity and social science, and there is. But even you talk to the student about how do they look at their course, and there is a no, they have to compulsorily earn certain credit in humanities and social science, all BTech student. But what is their image? And that image they carry from society, and that image gets reinforced in the institute also. They think that this subject is not worth studying and not worth spending time on. So literally, just one day before exam, they touch that book. And in IIT Delhi, what lingo, very negative image about. So, and this happened in front of me. I went to a very senior faculty in IIT, psychology faculty, to meet. And like any good institution, after evaluation, students are shown the scripts. So a particular student got very low marks. So he came to teacher and in a complaining was saying, how did I get? I scored so well in other, and why did I get such a low? So what lingo he used? Ma'am, I got such a good marks in all my engineering subject, and I got such a low marks in hookah subject. What is this hookah subject? So she explained to me, hookah means no smoking, no dhuma. So it is not solid. So image of social science is something that it is not solid. Only scientists talk about solid knowledge. Social scientists are narrative teller, no storyteller. So it is hookah subject. And in fact, I have taken few classes, but I have felt so humiliated in IIT Delhi because when I was teaching, so the student will keep on, so they don't mind coming on time. So one student in t-shirt and half shorts, in one hand Coke glass and in another basketball, and he was not bothered about it all. And just to draw his attention, I asked him some question related to physics. I thought that he may have thought that I am a psychology teacher, so I have nothing to do with science. So I asked some simple question from physics. He was not bothered. And I found in IIT Delhi, where so-called brilliant students come, they have no interest in learning things in depth. It is a CGPA-oriented institution. Day-to-day lingo is how much CGPA you got, kiska placement kitna hua, kya hua. Is it a place for learning? And so teacher's role is also very important to change the lingo which students use on day-to-day basis, what they are talking about. So major IIT and IIM students are CGPA oriented and pay package oriented. Yes. And this is, the paper mein aata, I say, is it a thing to take pride in? IIT Bombay student bags 1.5 crore package. In the field of domain, what you have achieved? What you have achieved, because how much pay somebody will get, it is decided by market. Does it mean knowledge in philosophy is less important than knowledge in computer science? And this is what is happening. Why I'm saying that society in general is also creating some kind of belief about knowledge. And unfortunately, our students are carrying those beliefs inside the teaching institute and research institute. And we have to fight against that. We have to fight slowly again. And unless we create an academically oriented culture, only in classroom we cannot do. No? Classroom does not exist in isolation. It is part of larger society. So like IIT student who are only CGPA oriented and pay package oriented, hardly there is any interest. I have informally conducted interview with IIT students of few batches, and they say that 2 days after their exam, they don't remember what they have learned. Why government is spending so much of money? Public money, taxpayers' money, even beggars' money is going there. And they are only concerned with, do we want to make? So a teacher's job is also to, it's not only teachers' emotional and social. So IIT student, I'm sure, although I have not conducted any systematic study, but they would have been better off if they would not have come to IIT as a human being. No, their social and emotional aspect would have been much better than after coming to IIT. Because in psychology, there has been research that if you spend sufficient amount of time in a dehumanizing situation where you are treated as a robot and everybody is a robot, we lose our emotional and social capacity. So all so-called apex institution of education has its darker side, that it makes us a robot. I do not know, I may be completely biased, that what is the academic achievement of IIT? We have to ask this question. They do produce BTech student, and I know that teaching at BTech level does not require very high level of intelligence. Because IIT faculties are appointed for their research competence. But do they do anything, any kind of research? And you know that in IIT, again, a different kind of caste system is there, because the brightest students are in BTech, less brighter in MTech, and least brighter in the PhD. This is truth. This is truth about IIT. IIT hardly receives very bright student at PhD level. So if you do not get bright student at PhD, what kind of research can be done?
They become the faculty.
Yeah.
And then they become the faculty.
So I do not know. I may be wrong also, but simply I am sharing that if we want to become a good researcher and a good teacher, we have to take things in totality. So we have to keep our humanness intact. So in the mad rush, even then I have some complaint with NAC also, because because of government pressure, there are many institutions who, I think rather, spends 3 or 4 months only how to improve their NAC grade. So institutions are becoming paper tiger. NAC grading not necessarily reflects academic strength. In some, I know that the vice chancellor का पूरा order आ गया है कि आप जिससे रिहर्सल होता है, इन जामिया मिलिया इस्लामिया exactly वो रिहर्सल करवा रहे थे. Even that is not a good thing. I think our day-to-day practice should be vibrant. It should be academically oriented. It should be humanly oriented. It should be emotionally very healthy place. If there is a suicide in any institution, it is a moment for soul searching. And we cannot absolve ourselves कि मैंने कोई लड़के के suicide में कुछ नहीं किया. If we are part and parcel of institution, we are equally responsible for any negative or unfortunate incident that takes place. So suicide is a big blot on the face of IIT. And it says, and it is my personal experience also, I don't find the students very happy there all the time under pressure, and those pressures are artificially created. It does not get translated into terms of effective learning. So they, after passing exam, they don't learn anything. IIT student I know, after doing their BTech, they go for made easy coaching. IIT के स्टूडेंट ने कहा कि मैं इंडियन इंजीनियरिंग सर्विस एग्जाम में बैठने लायक नहीं हूँ. Even I have got 8 CGPA. फिर made easy में कोचिंग में जाके, and the student told me what we could not learn in 4 years we have learned in 8 months. Made easy coaching. So I may be completely wrong, I don't know. But some of these evidence that I have gathered, let us try to avoid those elements to creep into our institutions. As I said that in academic institution, there is exclusive focus on our intellectual work intellectual ability, and our culture is mainly developed around this intellectual activity. So social and emotional aspect get grossly neglected. And sometimes if somebody tries to do that, he or she is ridiculed also for that. ये क्या कर रहा है? ये तो कोई पढ़ाई की चीज नहीं है. I have spoken a lot, so I would like to listen to you also, and would like to know. I would like to. I think your comment, your question, your observation, that will give me happiness here.
So you stated that there should be academic outcome of institute. So what you perceive according to your perception that you have taken from different sources,
Yes.
but what should be the output of an academic institute?
Academic, others may not agree with me. I have already said, but maybe re-articulate myself. One is the conventional parameter, NAC measures that, or nowadays World University ranking also. So that is that I call conventional measurement of academic output. But another is the human aspect. No, is there creativity also? Since you are agriculture scientist, and I was talking to Professor Padaria also. In other fields also, in agriculture also, some people, and he told me about his supervisor, the indigenous knowledge. It's not that agriculture started only after the setting up of this institute. No, human civilization could not have survived if human being had no knowledge of agriculture. But we also know that many indigenous knowledge are vanishing from our society because we have an image that those who have formal degree in agriculture, only they know about agriculture, and those who are doing agriculture and have been doing, they don't know. This indigenous knowledge, I have been told about Chhattisgarh that there used to be 1,000 varieties of rice. And because of scientific knowledge in agriculture science, the varieties are getting reduced. So science has a violent character. A very important social scientist of this country, Ashish Nandi, he published a book in 1990. The title of book is Science, Hegemony and Violence, edited book, Oxford University Press. So this is one example that in the field of agriculture, our indigenous knowledge. So I'm not saying that scientific knowledge is not important. I'm simply saying that scientists should be also respectful and sensitive to the indigenous knowledge and how those knowledges were transmitted from one generation to another generation also. Okay, so in classroom, if some student come from the rural area and who may not have formal knowledge of agriculture or formal knowledge of botany, but if he or she is coming from a farming family and have learned something from their parents and sisters through stories, in classroom discussion, that should not be ridiculed as if non-scientific knowledge. So distinction between scientific and non-scientific knowledge is an arbitrary distinction. Okay. There are research which suggest that source of many scientific discovery is from so-called non-scientific. Yeah. Okay. So only by developing our social and emotional skill, we shall be able to learn from them. So spirit is what? There should be a democratic dialogue. Basically, and this is again unfortunate, since we are educated, we are university teacher, we think we are at higher pedestal, and they are uneducated. They are not uneducated, they are unschooled maybe. There is a difference between uneducated and school. Because we came to school or college or university not because of some special quality in us, because there is a facility for that. But human civilization, just think, if our ancestors had no knowledge, would there have been a society? Would there have been agriculture? We survived. We survived against many diseases. We survived against all difficulty. So there was knowledge in society. And people have survived in very, very difficult situation also without having much facility. Let's appreciate that also.
Sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Sir, you have delivered a nice lecture. Without using anything, you articulated in a nice way. The first question is, how did you prepare for this lecture?
I do not know. In my life, I have never used PowerPoint, and I have decided I will never use a PowerPoint. So if somebody says that PowerPoint, as a teacher, I think this is my job. So maybe that when I'm sleeping, I'm thinking. Because for me, there is no distinction between my normal life and my teaching life. I keep on reading, I keep on thinking in those terms. So I did not think what I will be speaking here. No, every class, in every lecture, I come and I start speaking, and one point leads me to another point. So it is something like that.
Stereotypic diversity among the students.
Yeah.
Is any study conducted by following this type of practice, you can reduce the stereotype?
Yes.
And to add this, you talked about emotional sensitivity and social sensitivity. By virtue of our profession, we are somewhat skewed towards rationality. So, how to improve emotional sensitivity is with the social.
About rationality, what you say. Now there are books and scholarly articles. We should use it in plural. There is not one kind of rationality. Rationalities. Okay. So, because of enlightenment in the Western Europe, and modern science is product of that enlightenment, there is focus on only one kind of rationality, which popularly we call rationality. And rationality in science is only one. So even our notion of rationality is skewed. There is a diversity within rationality also. We talk even at, have you read about the tragedy of commons phenomenon? So if there is a field where cattle are taken for grazing, and different people go, and although there is a instruction that if some control is not observed, then after some time this field will not remain for grazing. It will get destroyed and finally all cattle will die. So this tragedy of commons, I'm forgetting the name of person, says that individually we all think that let my cattle eat maximum and I don't care for this. But so this is individual level of thinking. And individual level, it is perfectly rational. It is, so the rationality part, what is rationality? That my needs be satisfied. That is the meaning of rationality. But when we are functioning at group level, so individual rationality is at loggerhead at group level of rationality. Because finally, individual's action becomes inimical to group interest. And when group suffers, even individual will suffer. So in literature, and we have sufficient literature, that there are various, even I will tell you a research again, you can read this book. The title of book is Geography of Thought by Richard Nisbett. He is at Michigan University. very senior psychologist. He got a PhD student from China, and they were thinking about a research problem. Then research Nisbet noticed my students' reasoning and my reasoning, they differ. And after some time, he realized it is because of the cultural difference. So Chinese think it differently than the American. And then research was planned based on that. And later on, he wrote a book, which is termed as Geography of Thought. I will give you a simple example. In our objective type of question, questions are set like multiple choice questions. So suppose there is a question that please identify odd item out of the following. Question is, there are certain items like cow, tiger, and grass. So 3 words. And which one is the odd? Grass. Somebody will say grass. Other can say tiger also. Both answer are correct. Both answer are correct. Richard says that those who say grass, basically your reasoning is that cow and tiger are animal. So grass is in a different category. This is called category-based thinking. This is one way of, one kind of thinking. But those who say tiger, because cow eats grass. So there is a functional relationship between cow and grass.
But sir,
So
tiger also pray for the cow.
Yeah, that is also good. That is also a good answer. That is also. So tiger also eat. So tiger will not eat grass, but will eat cow. So then in that case,
So more logical correct answer will be the grass.
no, not more logical. My emphasis is that let there be diversity. People think differently. People think differently. So in some culture, there is focus on functional relationship. In some culture, there is a focus on categorical relationship. So the example that cow and tiger are similar, it is example of categorical thinking. Whereas those who say that cow eats grass or tiger eats cow, it is example of functional relationship. And it's not one is better, another is better. No, it's both are. So let there be diversity. So basically, in human society, in human civilization, there has been diversity. So there is diversity in terms of agricultural practice. There is also diversity in terms of human knowledge and how to think. How to think. We have a mythology we must have learned, like Lord Ganesh and his brother Karthik. So there was talk that who would be the real successor of parent. So it was said that go and take a round of the earth. So what Ganesh did, Karthik was very confident. So he went on his peacock and came very quickly. He thought that Ganesh is so slow on that. But what did Ganesh do? He took a round around his peacock. He says that my parents are like this earth. That's how he interpreted. Now in psychology, and it is very significant, we say that even in modern time, it's not only mythological, there is a tendency of human development. Okay. One model of human development is that you become independent. So independence is the parameter or measurement of your development. All Western culture. So in Western culture, if boys and girls do not start living separately from their parent at the age of 17 or 18, it is a matter of concern in that society. Parents become really worried that there is some problem in my upbringing that I could not make my child independent. In our society, just think, even we are 60-year-old or 50-year-old, and you announce to your parent that from today I want to live. इसकी बीवी ने कुछ कर दिया. So these are two different models of human development. And society have been organized like that, like that. So Karthik model is the independent. No, he thought he can be, but Ganesh model is that he never wanted to detach himself from parents. So Indian child, so a typical Western people will say that all Indian sons are mama's boy. Mama's boy, no, not very, very independent. No, we do not want to be independent. We want to be related. So relational self is part of Asian culture. Not only Asian, African, Latin American. Only a few part of the world, this tendency of independence has come. And because of this independence, now they are facing problems. According to one data, this data is from American Psychiatric Association. It is the highest academic body. That 70% American people cannot manage their day-to-day life without help from psychiatrists. It's a sick society. And we all Indian want to rush to America. America ki chale gaye to medal mil gaya. Which is a sick society. Their data show it. They are fed up with that. आप सुनते होंगे कि स्कूल में गया एक बच्चे ने गोली गन मार दी.
We're so engrossed with such a beautiful lecture, sir. Time and we are all hungry also, but we go out to meet you, sir.
No, I'm very thankful to all of you.
Touched our heart and soul. Opened our minds and.
कुछ और है कोई? हाँ, कुछ
सर वो लेकिन टाइम नहीं है तो
चलिए एक आध छोटा सा
सर एक बहुत सारे एग्जांपल
जी
India.
ने एक तो ये आशीष नंदी का नाम वंदना शिवा आपके आशीष नंदी
साइकोलॉजी में कितने स्कॉलर हुए हैं इंडिया से डेवलप हुए.
We are attending lecture from this is Thursday. No example from India. Everybody.
How many import the best sellers in the psychology?
आशीष नंदी और वंदना शिवा ये दो जो है ये प्रोमिनेंट इंडियन नेम है. इनका पढ़िए आपके एग्रीकल्चर साइंस में कैसे आशीष नंदी की ये जो एडिटेड बुक है साइंस हेजीमनी एंड वायलेंस ऑक्सफोर्ड यूनिवर्सिटी प्रेस. आशीष इस बुक में वंदना शिवा का भी एक चैप्टर है.
सर ने भी तो लिखा है पहले तो बोल रहे थे
हाँ अब अपनी बुक के बारे में तो बोलना नहीं चाहिए.
So friends, we discussed for lunch with there's a food for media for thought.
Do we need to come here again or?
We will be come here, assemble and clear this outside and then we go from here only for the visit to IR.
टाइम मैडम
I have kept 2:30.